My name is Vanessa Mitchell, and I died on a Tuesday. At least, that's what my family told everyone. I remember the accident in fragments, screeching tires, shattered glass, the metallic taste of blood. Then, darkness. They said I wouldn't wake up. My mother, Eleanor Mitchell, stood at my hospital bedside for exactly 3 days before she made her decision. The doctors had given her a choice: expensive long-term care with minimal chances of recovery, or letting nature take its course. She chose a third option, one that would change everything. I spent 8 months in a coma while the world moved on without me. My family told everyone I had passed away. They held a funeral, complete with an empty casket, and my graduation photo displayed on an easel. My mother wore black and accepted condolences with practiced grace. My father, David, stood silently beside her, eyes fixed on some distant point. And my sister, Olivia, dabbed at dry eyes with a handkerchief she'd never needed. Meanwhile, I was very much alive in a small private facility 3 states away, paid for discreetly with cash. My name on the records wasn't Mitchell anymore. It was Jane Smith Original, I know. The nurses who cared for me had no idea who I really was. To them, I was just another tragic case, a nameless woman who might never wake up. But I did wake up. I opened my eyes to a sterile room with beige walls and fluorescent lights. A nurse named Mara gasped when she saw me looking at her. "Oh my God," she whispered, dropping her clipboard. "You're awake." The next few weeks passed in a blur of rehabilitation, physical therapy, speech therapy, cognitive tests. The doctors called me Jane and marveled at my miraculous recovery. They kept asking if I remembered anything, anyone they could call. I said no. I wasn't ready to face the truth yet that my family had erased me. It was during my 3rd week of rehab that I found out what had really happened. Mara had left her tablet on my bed while she went to get my medication. Out of boredom, I picked it up, and there was a social media page open. I was about to close it when a name caught my eye: Olivia Mitchell. My sister. Her profile was public. Her latest post showed her standing next to my mother in front of our family home. They were celebrating my mother's promotion to hospital board director. The caption read, "So proud of Mom for this incredible achievement despite all she's been through. We rise above our tragedies." I scrolled further down. There I was, in a black and white photo, my high school graduation picture. Under it, in elegant script, "In loving memory of Vanessa Mitchell, 1997, 2021, forever in our hearts." The date of my supposed death was the day after my accident. They hadn't even waited for the doctors to determine if I would recover. They had declared me dead immediately. My hands trembled as I kept scrolling. My belongings donated. My college fund redirected to Olivia's law school tuition. My bedroom converted into my mother's home office. I had been completely erased. But why? What was so important about getting rid of me that they couldn't even wait to see if I would recover? I kept scrolling, desperate for answers. That's when I saw Ida post from about 2 months after my death. My mother standing with a lawyer, signing documents. Finally settled Grandmother Rose's estate. Her generosity will help fund the new pediatric wing at County General. My grandmother Rose. The woman who had raised me when my mother was too busy climbing the corporate ladder. The woman who had promised me her estate when she passed about $3 million worth of property and investments. Money that was supposed to help me start my own business. Money that was legally mine. Money that my mother had somehow claimed for herself. I put the tablet down, my mind racing. They hadn't just abandoned me, they had stolen from me, they had declared me dead to take what was rightfully mine. The pieces were finally falling into place. That night, I made my decision. I checked myself out of the facility the next morning against medical advice. I had no insurance, no ID, nothing but the clothes the hospital had given me and a few $100s Mara slipped me before I left. "For a fresh start," she said, her eyes filled with concern. "Whatever you're running from, Jane, be careful." If only she knew I wasn't running from anything. I was running toward it. I took a bus back to my hometown of Lakewood. It was surreal seeing the familiar streets, the coffee shop where I used to study, the park where I had my first kiss. Everything looked exactly the same, and yet nothing was. I wasn't Vanessa Mitchell anymore. I was a ghost returning to haunt the people who had buried her. I rented a small room above a laundromat with my meager funds and began my investigation. I needed proof of what they had done, legal proof that could stand up in court. I spent days in the public library, researching inheritance law, identity theft, and fraud. I learned that what my family had done wasn't just immoral, it was criminal. My first real break came when I discovered an old family friend still worked at the county clerk's office. Mrs. Henley had always liked me, always slipped me candy when I visited her with my grandmother. I took a chance and approached her, wearing dark sunglasses and a hat pulled low. "Mrs. Henley," I said quietly, standing at her desk. "It's me, Vanessa." She dropped her pen, her face going pale. "That's not possible," she whispered. "Vanessa Mitchell died last year." "No," I said, removing my sunglasses. "I didn't. And I need your help to prove it." She stared at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Rose always said Eleanor was capable of anything," she murmured. "But this—" "Mrs. Henley helped me access the records I needed, my death certificate, signed by my own mother, the probate records transferring my grandmother's estate, the paperwork that effectively erased me from existence. Each document was like a knife, twisting deeper. My mother hadn't just signed these papers, she had orchestrated an elaborate fraud. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. A medical directive supposedly signed by me before the accident, giving my mother full authority to make all my healthcare decisions. The signature was a forgery close, but not quite right. The loops of my V were always more rounded, the cross of my T always lower. That was when I realized this wasn't just about the money. My mother had been planning this for months, maybe years, waiting for the right opportunity to get rid of me and claim what she thought should be hers. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I considered going to the police, but without proper ID, with a death certificate on file. Who would believe me? I needed to confront them directly. I needed them to see the ghost they had created. I chose my moment carefully. The annual charity gala at County General Hospital, the event my mother had organized every year since I was a child. The same event where, 5 years ago, my grandmother had publicly announced her intention to leave her estate to me. I remembered the barely concealed fury in my mother's eyes that day, the rigid smile that didn't reach her eyes. Now I understood why. The night of the gala arrived, cold and clear. I wore a dress I'd found at a thrift store, black, elegant, understated. I pulled my hair up the way my grandmother had taught me and applied makeup to accentuate my features. I wanted them to recognize me instantly. I wanted no doubt about who had returned. I slipped into the ballroom unnoticed, another face in the crowd of benefactors and hospital staff. The room gleamed with crystal and silver, soft music playing as people mingled and champagne flowed. At the center of it all stood my mother, resplendent in a deep blue gown, my father at her side like an accessory. And there was Olivia, now with a law degree funded by my inheritance, laughing with a group of young doctors. I waited until my mother took the stage to make her speech. She tapped the microphone gently, calling for attention. The room fell silent. "Welcome everyone to our annual fundraiser," she began, her voice smooth as silk. "Tonight is special. Tonight marks the completion of the Rose Mitchell Pediatric Wing, named in honor of my late mother who left an extraordinary legacy." The crowd applauded. My mother smiled, basking in their approval. "I'd also like to take a moment to honor another loss," she continued, her voice dropping to a practiced, somber tone. "My daughter, Vanessa, who would have loved to see this project completed. Her tragic passing last year reminded us all how precious life is and how important it is to create lasting change while we can." That was my cue. I stepped forward, glass in hand, moving deliberately toward the stage. People turned to look, then did double takes. The murmurs started, rippling through the crowd like a wave. "What a touching sentiment, Mother," I said, my voice ringing out clearly across the suddenly silent room. Especially coming from the woman who declared me dead while I was still breathing. The glass slipped from my mother's hand, shattering on the stage, her face drained of color as she stared at me, her composure cracking for the first time in my life. "Vanessa?" my father whispered, taking a stumbling step forward. "That's not possible," Olivia said, her voice shrill. "You're dead. We buried you." Did you? I asked, climbing the steps to the stage. Or did you bury an empty casket while I lay in a coma in a facility where you thought no one would find me? The gasps from the audience were audible. Cell phones were raised, recording the scene. Good. Let them capture this moment. Let them see the truth. I have proof, I continued, turning to address the stunned crowd. Proof that my mother forged documents, falsified my death certificate, and stole my inheritance. All so she could fund this wing, all so she could claim the glory and the position on the board she'd always wanted. Security guards were moving toward the stage now, uncertain what to do. My mother had recovered enough to gesture frantically at them, but it was too late. The damage was done. Vanessa, please, my father said, looking genuinely distressed. We thought you wouldn't wake up, the doctors said. The doctors said there was a chance. I cut him off. A chance you never gave me because it was more convenient for me to be dead. I reached into my purse and pulled out copies of the documents Mrs. Henley had helped me obtain. I tossed them onto the stage, pages fluttering like confetti. It's all there, I said, my voice breaking. Every signature, every lie, every theft, and now everyone knows. The aftermath was chaos. My mother was escorted from the stage, her carefully constructed image shattered. My father followed, head bowed. Olivia disappeared into the crowd, and I stood there, surrounded by strangers who had just witnessed my resurrection. The next few months were a blur of legal battles and media coverage. Daughter declared dead returns to expose family fraud became the headline of the year. My case went to court, where my mother eventually pleaded guilty to multiple charges rather than face a public trial. My father claimed ignorance but was charged as an accessory. Olivia, who had genuinely believed I was dead, was spared criminal charges but had to return the portion of the inheritance she had received. I reclaimed my identity, my inheritance, and my life. But some things couldn't be reclaimed, like trust, like family. Those were gone forever. Today, I run a foundation that helps coma patients and their families navigate the complex medical and legal challenges they face. I use my grandmother's money the way she intended to make a difference, to create something meaningful. Sometimes people ask me if I've forgiven my family. It's a complicated question. My mother and father served their sentences and moved away. We don't speak. Olivia sends me Christmas cards with carefully worded apologies that never quite acknowledge the full scope of what happened. I still haven't decided if I'll ever respond. What I do know is this: they tried to erase me from existence, but instead, they made me unforgettable. They thought my story was over, but I was just beginning a new chapter. So let me ask you, have you ever been written out of your own life? Have you ever had to fight to reclaim what was rightfully yours? Drop a 1 in the comments if you've ever had to rise from the ashes of someone else's betrayal. Because here's what I've learned. Sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you deserve. Sometimes you have to build something new from the ruins of what was destroyed. And sometimes, coming back from the dead is the only way to truly start living.